Fiction and Fables presents Beyond the Water's Edge, a novel. This is the author, Janine Eby. Chapter 2. Something Old, Something New. Alara woke with a start, gripping her blanket to ground her. The first rays of sunlight peeked through scattered clouds, spilling watery morning light into her room. But this hadn't been what woke her. A wren chanted its alarm-like song, perched atop the old hickory tree just outside her window. Eyes watching her in the dark, footsteps in the hall. The echo of cold fear festered in the groggy corners of her mind, as hard to shake as the tiredness clinging to her eyes, her limbs. The clock on her desk read 6:23, entirely too early for a Saturday. Her eyes shot to her door, still locked. She tried to convince herself that last night had been nothing but the imaginings of a nerve-racked mind, because the idea that someone would have broken into her house, that they would have come into her room and then simply left, seemed absurd. She rolled over and tried closing her eyes, but sleep had a nature in that the harder you tried to catch it, the more it slipped away. Instead, she rolled out of bed. Her phone had made its way to the floor sometime during her restless night. She scooped it up on her way to the hall. Quiet, empty. Her father was sure to be awake, tucked away in his office, spending the morning hours alone. But the rest of her family would still be sleeping. She leaned against the cool wall and pushed a handful of chestnut-brown hair out of her face. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a text from Kyla cropping up on her notification screen. Meet me at the Grove, 7 o'clock. The grove, or rather, the scattered patch of trees standing just before the start of the real forest, was quiet, secluded. Only a 10-minute walk from her house. All of these would have made it the ideal meeting place for anyone but Kyla. Kyla was gifted with the piano, had a voice that rivaled any songbird, was well liked at school, but she was not the outdoors type. Alara had long since given up on trying to get Kyla to go camping and hiking with her family. Alara wasn't sure what to make of the text, but then she answered the only thing she could. See you there. In the bathroom, she splashed cool water on her still tired face, wondered if it wasn't too late to get back into bed, shook away the temptation. Back in the hall, she paused, peered at Liam and Willow's doors. Liam's door was shut. Willow's was cracked open a handbreadth, as usual. She trod over the floorboard outside her door, listened as it groaned under her weight, stared at it for several seconds and thought. She didn't have time for this, or the mental capacity. She had just over 10 minutes until she needed to be walking out that front door. She raked a brush through her thick, tangled mane, grabbed an olive green t-shirt and jeans, the first clothes her fingers touched. Then she was jogging down the stairs and cramming her feet into worn sneakers from the closet by the front door. Unlike the past week, the day was bright. The morning air was cool, but stagnant air hung about, heavy with the smell of grass and sticky with the remains of last night's rain. Other than the occasional car passing on the street behind her, she was alone. And yet, unease followed her every step, creeping up her spine, filling her head with doubts. She tried and failed to anticipate Kyla's news, something that would warrant such an early meeting, at the Grove no less. She veered to the left and headed for the old, familiar path. Alara and Liam had once come here often, given the short walking distance from home, but with Kyla it had been different. She and Kyla had been friends longer than her memory could serve her, but as far as she knew, Kyla had never set foot here. Glaring light from the rising sun cut through the trees. Alara squinted as she reached the black walnut at the entrance. The trail was still visible, though overgrown in places. She brushed her fingers along the corrugated bark, stepping around a rotting log protruding from the ragweed and tufts of long grass. "Kyla," she called. She swatted at gnats around her eyes, heading deeper into the shade. The old sweet gum marked the farthest reaches of the small grove. She stopped beneath its sweeping branches, scanning the straggly path and overgrown patches along either side. It was 7:05 according to her phone. Kyla was running late, but not by much. Something didn't feel right. but she brushed it off. That was expected after another round of the same dream. 3 nights in a row. 3 nights waking up, gasping and breathless. 3 nights of restless tossing and turning. She kicked away the lingering seed capsules and plopped down on a raised mound at the foot of the sweet gum tree, avoiding a waxy, dark-leafed vine climbing to her right. Carolina jessamine. When in bloom, the bright yellow flowers brightened up late winter, the first sign of spring. The vine was beautiful, but toxic. The ground was damp and lumpy beneath her, and the uneven bark was rough against her back, but she didn't mind. The forest was a place she could unwind, though she had a feeling that wasn't why Kyla had asked her here. She pulled out her phone, but without service, she quietly returned it to her pocket. A light breeze stirred leaves. She turned, anticipation rising, but she was still alone, save for the bird above her. A crow hopped from branch to branch in the tree overhead, watching her curiously. She watched the bird in turn, but at her gaze the crow hopped away to another branch until it was hidden behind a green curtain of leaves. Kyla was late, but somehow that didn't surprise Alara, though the longer she waited, the more she began to wonder if Kyla would show. She rested her eyes as the minutes ticked by. One more glance at her phone. 7:33. She had waited long enough, and unfurled to her feet, shaking the leaves from the back of her pants. She peered deeper through the long shadows. By appearance, the grove hadn't changed much in the 6 or so years since she had played here with Liam. There were minor changes. The trees had matured some. A few new additions had sprung up in various places. But the wood had an entirely different feel to it now, as though familiar and foreign all at once. Then a shimmer of color against the background of brown and green caught her eye. Just a few feet away, lying atop the litter of leaves by the oak tree, a small stone gleamed in the scattered light. Shuffling closer, she plucked up the stone, examining it between her forefinger and thumb. From a distance it had seemed gold, but now it held a translucent quality with flecks of color that changed in the light. At certain angles it gleamed silver, and still different angles proved it to be turquoise. Strange, foreign. A gust of wind rushed by, whipping her hair, pushing her forward. She swiped the hair from her face, her hand stopping abruptly by the edge of her cheek. The ragweed, the ivy wrapping around the oak, all of it was gone, smoothed over by 2 lines of trees atop steep banks like pedestals. Their trunks bowed inward, branches reaching across the divide, outstretched limbs gingerly brushing along the ceiling in a delicate handshake. A narrow path cut through the center, glowing under the warm, golden light filtering from above. She stumbled forward, between the mossy banks, gawking at the arcaded, leafy architecture, and the rest of the world fell away. A yearning blossomed in her chest. She wanted whatever this passage held more than she had ever wanted anything in her life. At once every swirling, chaotic current within her stilled. Doubt and anxiety washed away, sweeping her feet out from under her. She collapsed to her knees, sat back, let the earth cradle her in soft arms. Weightless, unexplainable, beyond reason. The wind whispered, the air danced. Like the trees had been holding their breath, and collectively they released it. And she would follow. She could have been swimming, floating along air as thick as water, the easiest thing in the world. Her mind drifted, and her thoughts blurred, bobbing alongside her as a separate entity. A light shone in the distance. When she became aware of this, she blinked, bringing her vision back into focus. She had lost track of time. She couldn't say how long she had been walking, or how deep in the woods she must have been. She came to a lull. The path curved to the right and ended. The pieces of herself coalesced with a shuddering finality, and she was left again as simply herself, uncertain, confused. She wanted to chase after that sense of peace, that weightless feeling that had slipped away like a phantom, but the path stopped here. A pillar of a tree grew before her, straight and tall and wide enough to fill every inch of the path between the banks. Thorny hedges wove into tight knots, blocking either side of the giant, but she was desperate to bring back that feeling. Without thinking, she reached out for the tree. Her hand dipped, swiping through empty air. A gasp escaped her lips. She yanked her hand back. The tree seemed so vivid, so real, and yet she couldn't deny what she had felt, or rather, what she hadn't felt. Her hand hovered, raised to chest height as she stared at the broad trunk, blinking several times in disbelief. She shook her head and reached out again, and again her fingers brushed through the tree into nothing but air. A crazy thought popped into her head, the kind that would look very stupid if she were wrong. Screw it, why not? She asked herself. She took a deep breath, clenching and unclenching her hands as she squinted at the image of the tree. Then, against every instinct that warned her otherwise, she stepped forward, into the trunk.